This is a free sample of the book Don't Give a Shit and Succeed by Cairo Copeland. The first half of this book is posted right here on YouTube, free for everyone to listen to. If you like this content and want to hear or read the rest, or want to listen to it free of ads, visit reinventideal.com/stoic. The book is available on Kindle, paperback, and Audible at reinventideal.com/. Chapter 2. An easily adopted superpower that will propel you far. Being offended causes an unnecessary outpour on your part. If we must take down religious symbols because they offend atheists, does that also mean clothes must be removed because they offend nudists? The slippery slope toward the spread of stupidity doesn't take much imagination. Eventually, we'll get to a point where the act of speaking itself will be illegal. The first thing to stop giving a shit about is anything and everything that offends you. The fact of the matter is that you choose to allow these things to have the power to offend you, which is an expense of your limited energy or daily Mortal Kombat life bar. 2020 saw some of the greatest displays of idiocy when it comes to being offended, or rather, choosing to feel offended. Tantamount to them was when the NFL team, formerly known as the Washington Redskins, were forced to change their name to just the Washington Football Team. I swear to God, I'm not making that up. That's what they're really called, because some people chose to be offended by the name Redskins. Who, though? Native Americans? Contrary to what you might have guessed, Native Americans are not at all offended by the name Redskins, as evidenced by the fact that Native American schools with Native American students across the country choose to use the mascot name Redskins for their high school football teams led by Native American coaches and principals. If they were at all offended by it, why do they use it themselves? They're not offended. Let's not forget that the name was originally given to the NFL team to honor its former coach, who was part Sioux. Who was offended? White people. When you look at who bitched the loudest about the name, it was never a Native American. It was some white douchebag that claimed to speak for Native Americans by virtue of being a liberal progressive. These same white douchebags haven't said a word about the name Oklahoma, demanding the state change its name, despite the fact that it's Choctaw for red people. But here's the real kicker. These white people are choosing to be offended. Offense is taken. It cannot be given. Whenever you don't like something, you say, I take offense to that. You never say, you give me offense with that. Even if Native Americans were complaining about the name Redskins and said they were offended by it, it would still be by their own choice. They may say the mascot is cultural appropriation, but I can say that about anything. For example, even an innocent movie like The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I refuse to call it Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas because Tim Burton did not write it nor direct it, contains offensive cultural appropriation. For many American families, Christmas is a very time-honored cultural tradition they put on each year. Now, here comes some privileged pale white guy that bitches about working only one day a year, mocking the tradition to mimic it. If anything, Jack Skellington was committing cultural appropriation. But do you hear anyone bitching about that? A movie like this brought peace and common ground to two widely different types of people. Halloween lovers and Christmas lovers often have little in common. Now this movie serves as a treaty between the two holidays that only exist to bring joy to children, perhaps the purest reason for existence ever. Yet some people still bitch about even this movie, just like the douchebag Christian that scolds poor trick-or-treating kids on their doorstep, telling them that they're not giving out candy because Halloween celebrates the devil. Some people find it more important to have their opinions not only heard, but also imposed upon others, rather than let little kids have their 15 minutes of joy before they become adults. We can't say Merry Christmas anymore because it offends Jews and Muslims. Next, we won't be able to say Happy Holidays because it will offend atheists who don't believe any days, or anything for that matter, is holy. We won't even be able to say Happy Day because that would be non-exclusive to sad people or night people. So eventually, we won't be able to say anything. This is already true when it comes to comedians. They're barely permitted to be comedians anymore. Just ask Kevin Hart, who was denied the opportunity to host the Oscars in 2018 because he had tweets back in 2010 that a few gays and lesbians chose to be offended by. Who's the bigger loser, though? Hart for not getting to host an award show that no one watches? Or the pitiful, pathetic fuck that had enough time and nothing else better to do than to go through 9 years of Kevin Hart's Twitter stream in search of something to choose to be offended by? Being offended is a choice. The pain you feel from a punch or injury is involuntary because physical damage is done to the body. But the pain from an insult results in no physical damage. An insult is comprised of words, and words are nothing more than sequences of sound waves. They only have the meaning and the power that you choose to give them. My mother told me not to say the word bitch. Being a kid, I asked why. She said, because it's offensive. To which I replied, but it's just a sound. And it's a sound you should never say, she responded. I wish I had the knowledge and smart-ass bravery back then to say, okay, but what do I do when I have to say the word obituary? Am I supposed to say, oh female doguary? Words only have the meaning and power you choose to give them. If they ever have the power to offend you, remember, it was you that chose to give them that power. And that's very telling about the kind of person you are, if you are one that chooses to be offended by sequences of sound waves. But many of the whiners and bitches that claim they are so deeply offended by things aren't necessarily making their displeasure known because their feelings are legitimately hurt. They are complaining because they have a need to have their complaints heard. Some people actually get orgasmic pleasure from indignation. But having your complaint heard is another thing to stop giving a shit about. Even when it's heard, nobody else cares about it. What about when there are legitimate assholes, racists, sexists, and douchebags out there? Shouldn't we complain about them so that other people are forewarned about them? Good question. However, everyone already knows they exist. Anyone that has gone through high school has learned this lesson the hard way, that there are people who will not like you for no reason at all. Shit, there are even people who will even hate you just because of your race, religion, politics, opinions, gender, and even your age. You being offended does absolutely nothing to help the world. These people that get sexual pleasure from indignation mistake it for taking meaningful action. They believe that their choice to be offended makes them more empathetic, when really it just makes them more pathetic. Much like how we are the masters of complicating our lives and justifying why we do it. This is nothing more than complicating our emotions by being offended and then attempting to justify taking that offense. I get pretty angry about simps and their simping behavior. My book, Don't Be Sympathetic, clearly outlines how the overpopulation of simps makes my life harder, as well as the life of every other male that is not a simp. But me giving them the dirty looks when they simp, white knight, and worship women will do nothing to improve the situation. You can't shame a simp out of being a simp, because in order to be a simp, you must not have any shame about the stench of your thirst and your lack of sexual intelligence. As much as it injures me, I don't get offended by them. The world itself is nothing but a simp factory anyway. So getting offended by something that is not ever going away is to burn up useful energy over something I can do nothing about. Similarly, indignation does nothing to make the world better. It only raises your blood pressure. Much like the loser that had the time to go through Kevin Hart's tweet history. Many people actively look for things to be offended by, and when you look for something, you are likely to find it. Seek, and ye will find, the Bible says. But what if we looked for a way to not be offended by something? Is that possible? And if so, does that make things better? The answer is a resounding yes to both. What offends you? A jerk that doesn't clean up after his dog who took a shit on your lawn? A slow old fart driver in the fast lane? Or a simp trying to win over your girlfriend by white knighting? You can look at the asshole with the dog as doing you a service, fertilizing your grass to make it grow. The old fart driving slow reminds us not to be in such a hurry and stop rushing to where we cut corners and make unsafe gambles like running red lights. And the simp is actually doing you a great service in making you look more attractive because women are horrifically repulsed by white knight simps. The next time she sees you after getting away from the simp, she'll be begging to bang you because you're so much more arousing to her after experiencing that horrendous turnoff. Even the assholes of the world are people we should be thankful for. Yes, even the ones that are rude to waitstaff and service workers, because they are amazing teachers. They teach you how you should never act. And you'll become so much more likable and celebrated by others just from being nothing like the asshole you witnessed. Less energy is expended with this glass is half full mentality, as opposed to the victimhood mindset that drains so much energy. Seneca once wrote, "You are expressing a wish that the whole human race were inoffensive, which may hardly be. Moreover, those who would gain by such wrongs not being done are those who would do them, not he who could not suffer from them even if they were done." This means that people who would act like assholes would get the most benefit from a world without asshole behavior. That also means they are digging their own graves by being assholes. The Stoic wisdom concerning offensive assholes was, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. If you don't feel pissed on by the unflattering remarks of others directed at you, have you been pissed on at all? When you do not find yourself able to identify the image of you that another person has of you, do their words mean a damn thing? It is your choice whose opinions matter more, your opinion of yourself or someone else's opinion of you. The best course of action over choosing to be offended is to choose to give people the room to be themselves. Most people do not want to be viewed as assholes. Sometimes they're inconsiderate, annoying, selfish, and impatient. But haven't you been all those things at some point? What makes a person qualify for being considered offensive is that they don't live up to your expectations. Do you really have to have those expectations met, or have them at all? Many times in my life, I was annoying, selfish, arrogant, impatient, and immature, but I grew out of it and became better. I only needed the room to grow and to do it my own way on my own time. To give people the room to be themselves is to give them the room to grow. And the more room you give them, the more they will give you. Instead of choosing to be offended by people, opinions, actions, or words, choose to be amused by them. Thank you for listening to this free sample of the book, Don't Give a Shit and Succeed by Cairo Copeland. If you enjoyed it and want to hear or read the rest, or want to listen to it free of ads, visit reinventideal.com/stoic. The book is available on Kindle, paperback, and Audible at reinventideal.com/stoic.